So today we're going to be dismantling the rear of one of my 1984 Klipsch Cornwalls. When playing some music a few moments ago, you can hear what seems to be a slight buzzing coming from the woofer when low notes are being played. Now what I suspect this is a squawker or woofer that has become somewhat loose over the years. Keep in mind this is a 40-year-old speaker now. So what I'm going to do is take this as an opportunity to do a breakdown of how to remove the back panel. Now one thing worth noting, I do not have the original plugs on the back. They have been replaced with banana plugs, but that won't change the teardown too much. So the first step is going to be using a Phillips head screw gun or driver to remove these 13 screws on the back. And I'll skip to when we're done with that. Now that all of the screws have been removed, what we're going to do now is firmly grasp here, making sure not to let it drop. We're going to actually pull the the back of the speaker off. So what we have now is the inside of a 1984 Klipsch Cornwall 1. Now, for those of you who have been inside Klipsch Cornwalls in the past, you may be somewhat surprised to see a K33E and the K57K in a Cornwall 1. Now, in 1984, Klipsch began using these newer polycarbonate horns as a replacement for the cast horns that they were using in previous generation Cornwalls. This is the cast horn style that would then be used in the Cornwall 2 and continue to be used going forward. So as such, this particular model, the 84s and the 85s, are often referred to as the Cornwall 1.5. Now, a couple ways you can identify that is with the crossover network here, which does appear to be all original still. This is a B3 crossover, which you can see right up there. That is a Klipsch B3 crossover. Now, while I'm in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten every single screw that I can see to potentially make sure we don't have any wobble as the woofer is actually moving, because I do suspect that might be the cause of our slight buzz. Now, after going on and setting my drill to roughly 12 or so, just about every screw on the mid-range moved about 1/8 of a turn, which means it wasn't as tight as it could be. As for the woofer, I moved it up to about 13 or 14, just because they are bigger screws, and each one of those screws seemed to have about 1/4 turn. Now, I would assume that is likely due to the fact that over the last 37 years since the speaker was manufactured, that woofer consistently moving has walked those screws out somewhat. So in the future, it might be a good idea to maybe use some thread lock. And while I'm in here, one other thing I'm going to do is just tighten up all of the screws on the crossover network as well, because I don't want them bouncing around. And while we are in here getting a good look at this crossover network, it does appear to be in pretty good shape considering its age. A lot of people say that when a speaker is of this age, you should rebuild the crossover, but I'm one to believe that if it works well, it works well. And if the caps aren't leaking, leave them alone. Just leave well enough alone. However, one thing you certainly can do is to, with a flathead screwdriver, just ensure that all of your terminals are tight and snug so that you're not getting an arcing condition. One last thing I'm going to do when putting this back together is I'm going to put some newer brass screws in it. There's no real reason for this other than consistency, due to the fact that the other screws, some of them seemed like they had been stripped a little bit. So I just would like to replace them with something a little bit newer, and hopefully that gets a nice tight dig for the back panel. One other thing that I would like to go over real quick, because people do ask me quite a lot, is how to decode the serial number on these speakers. So with the 82, I believe, and higher, it's rather easy. The 84 is the year, and 43 is the week, and 648 is the set. So that's how you can tell when it was made. So this was made in the 43rd week of 1984, and it was the 648th set. The CWL on top here stands for Cornwall Walnut Lacquer. So you might see CB, which would be Cornwall Birch, or CBD, which would be Cornwall Birch Decorator, or perhaps CWO, which would stand for Cornwall Walnut Oiled. Now, lacquered means that it has this shined finish on it, which still, after all these years, looks quite good. And with a little bit of care, will have no problem lasting many more years to come. One last thing, it might be difficult to see. Whoever owned these speakers before me and put something wet on it and left this ring on it, I just want you to know, I hate you.